between them. This was extremely apparent when Rachel tried to make fun of me to him in regards to my body, something she has done many times, and something that Josh has gone along with more times than I count. But this time, he shut her down. He told her not to speak like that about my wife. Reading that message, I felt a small flicker of satisfaction. I continued reading their messages and felt a weird sense of pride in the fact I was doing all of this. And the best part was, Josh didn't even know what I had in store for him. I continued doing the ideal housewife duties while also maintaining my full-time job. I was getting tired, however. The days were long and the nights even longer. Cooking elaborate dinners, keeping the house spotless, and always having a smile ready for Josh, who never offered to help with any chores. I knew I couldn't keep up this act much longer. I had enough evidence for the divorce, and one night I decided it was time. I stayed up late staring at my computer screen searching for a divorce lawyer to take on my case. Unfortunately, finding a divorce lawyer within my budget was not an easy task when trying to do so quietly, but after many, many days, I finally stumbled across one. Julia Richardson. Her profile was really impressive, and I sent her an email to schedule a time to meet. The next day, I checked my email and she told me her availability. Meeting with her in secret was a nerve-wracking experience. I would often tell Josh that I was meeting up with coworkers for an outreach event held by my job, then come back home and continue my housewife duties. The first time I sat down in her office, I was a bit nervous. Julia was a sharp-eyed woman. She listened intensely as I explained everything. She told me to gather as much evidence as I could, and the more proof that I have, the stronger my case will be. That was when I showed her the screenshots on my phone. She told me that it was almost solid and to get a bit more. So I did just that. The emotional turmoil was intense. I often cried myself to sleep. I also tried to talk to my friend Jess about the situation, but I knew I couldn't tell her everything. Josh was oblivious to how I really felt. He showered me with compliments and affection. It was almost laughable the way he thought he could hide the monster that was talking to Rachel. After one night of checking Josh's phone again, I noticed Rachel said something that was shocking. She asked that since I was being the perfect wife that he wouldn't have to come be intimate with her anymore. He replied that this is exactly what he meant, that they would no longer be meeting up and sleeping together. This was it. This was the evidence that I needed for my case. I screenshot this thread and go to bed. The next day, I met up with Julia with some hard evidence that he had been cheating with his ex. She tells me this is exactly what we needed, and we can proceed. She's forming up my case, and all I can think about is being free. She crafted our case against him, and I headed home. I planned my escape for the next day, and I was ready to go out with a bang. The next night came, and I had everything just right. I made him his favorite comfort foods. First, I served him some Caesar salad with fresh Parmesan. Then I served him a perfectly grilled ribeye steak prepared exactly how he liked it, medium rare. The sides were creamy garlic mashed potatoes and baked asparagus. For dessert, I made him his favorite dessert that his grandmother used to make, an apple pie. When Josh saw all that I made for him, his eyes widened from excitement. He downed all the food and praised me at how good it was. As I smiled back at him and told him how much he deserved it, I felt a bittersweet satisfaction. He told me he wanted to show how much he appreciated me and took me to the bedroom. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel nauseated by his touch. Instead, I felt a cold, detached feeling. I was ready to end this charade. I excused myself to the bathroom and came back out with his favorite clothing on me. He couldn't keep his eyes off of me, and then we got to action. This was the best I ever screwed him. Even better than our wedding night. After about 10 minutes, he was out like a light. I effed his brains out. I looked over at him as he slept peacefully. I left the divorce papers on the kitchen counter and quietly packed up the rest of my belongings and headed to the car. I headed to my brother's house where he lived a couple states away, and the whole car ride I blasted my favorite pop music. I felt the weight of Josh flow away as I sang my playlist. After a couple hours, I had finished my playlist and was left alone with my thoughts. I drove through the night, occasionally stopping for food at the diners or to use the restroom. The night was more beautiful than I could imagine. I can't even begin to describe how good I felt driving through the night to Virginia. I kept glancing at the clock on the dashboard, watching the hours tick by. It was way past midnight, and I hadn't slept a bit, and the months of exhaustion hit me like a truck, but I just wanted to put as much distance as I could between me and everything I was leaving behind. A couple weeks later, we both had to appear in court. The divorce proceedings were painful. Seeing Josh again, even in such a mundane environment of the lawyer's office, was hard. He looked broken and defeated. He was a shadow of the man he once was. The courtroom was cold and emotionless. Josh would try to explain himself in court and how he had already cut ties with Rachel, but it was too late. Each time we met, he seemed to sink further into despair. I felt a bit guilty but quickly squashed it. He had brought it upon himself. Our interactions were brief and formal. Josh tried to talk to me, but I refused to engage. He would try to meet me in the parking lot asking for answers and begging to find a way to work things out. I kept my responses short and formal. The evidence I had spoke for itself. I felt that there was no need for further discussion. As the divorce drew to a close, I began to feel a sense of closure. I found a new job and was making new friends in Virginia. It was hard to finally tell Jess the full extent of our relationship, but she understood what had to be done. She still comes to visit me sometimes.